Hi, Olenka.
Hi, Jen.
We're back, and I'm so grateful to have you. So, those of you who are watching in, you remember Olenka from Clariderma, and we talked to Botox or not to Botox, which actually lit up my DMs because what most women took from our conversation, which I was really pleased about, was the fact that we can make our own choices. We have agency, and the conversation around us being aware of not maybe projecting or judging someone for their choices. So I was really pleased that that was actually what a lot of people took from the podcast. And then to have you back today around hormones and health for women is really important to me because you said something in my DMs when we were chatting back and forth that really caught my attention. You said, let's face it, Jen, so many of women right now are on like that precipice to massive success in their careers. They're feeling so aligned. And then suddenly we're met with hormonal changes that give us brain fog, make us start to feel like we're losing ourselves slightly. And that's sort of the lens you look at health and hormones with. And I got so excited because I thought, yeah, that's actually a real experience we're having. So I'm excited to dive in.
Thank you. This is very near and dear to my heart because hormones and adding that to my practice came really organically. You know, women would come in and they would come for their Botox, and it's such a therapy session, right? Like
It
getting
is.
your hair done.
Yeah.
And so they would be either having a hot flash right in front of me, or they would be talking about their family doctor experience and how it just didn't go well, or they're having a really hard time, or they would just kind of vent about work issues. And
Right.
these are strong women. They are women in these amazing careers. They have made it. They're trying to have their swan song moment.
Yeah.
And they just are feeling like they're falling apart. They just really don't know. They don't understand what's happening to them on the inside. And they're really afraid that people are noticing on the outside, especially if they're women who have made a career in a predominantly male-driven profession. They feel as though now whatever their edge was, they just can't compete, and they have no vocabulary around what is happening to them.
Right.
And I need to have that conversation with them.
Yes, please. And thank you. And I remember the first time I experienced this, it wasn't too long ago. I used to be really, really sharp on my calls. Like ideas came to me quickly. And knowing marketing the way I do, I just didn't have to do a lot of contemplating in my mind to come up with ideas. And there was this particular call, and I remember it just feeling almost like somebody put a curtain down in my mind. And I thought, how come I'm having such a hard time coming up with a solution here? I know this. And it actually kind of like made my confidence a little wobbly because I wasn't accustomed to having to pause and sort of think something through. And it shook me.
Thank you for sharing that. That is something that I hear a lot. Women will just kind of say it's that something that took my word away. It took my mind away from the thing that I knew how to do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it is like this little fog. It's that curtain. It's that sort of walking around with a feeling of this is not my body. This is not my brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember wondering, like, is this early set on dementia? Like,
Oh.
you catastrophize things,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, what are those signs, those things that we could be looking for, and maybe even just the education of that? Because if I had known, I maybe would have not been so shook during that moment. So, I'd love you just to maybe educate the people listening in, the women listening in, on what those early signs are.
I think this is really interesting because if you've read any books or you've listened to some of the podcasts, a lot of it is just that the signs and symptoms are so broad.
Right.
And the thing about it to know really is that it makes perfect sense because even though we think of, let's say, estrogen, testosterone as sex hormones, they've sort of been labeled sex hormones. They are not sex hormones. They are full body hormones. We do not just have estrogen, progesterone in our reproductive organs. No, we have them everywhere. We have them in our hair, which is why your hair falls out. We have them in our skin, which is why all of a sudden your skin gets so dry and crepey looking. We have it everywhere, which is why for women, we have all these sort of little symptoms. You know, you'll get night sweats, you'll get hot flashes, which is some of the more common ones, but you'll also get joint pain. All of a sudden, you won't be able to lift as much. Your muscle mass kind of goes down. You get this weird redistribution of body fat where all of a sudden you had a six pack, but now it's sort of under this little layer that you never had before.
Uh-huh.
And you're working out. You have changed nothing in your eating, in your working out, in the way that your lifestyle is. And I think that's the important piece, is that women will come in and their lifestyle is so dialed in that they've changed nothing, and yet physiologically they've changed. Their body type has now changed.
Right.
Their mind has now changed. And so that brain fog, the sharpness, frozen shoulder is one that women don't really know, but all of a sudden they'll have mobility issues and they'll go to the doctor. They'll get an x-ray, they'll get, physio, MRI, and there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it's this small little side effect of not having enough hormones in your body.
And it can feel defeating. But
Yes.
I would love our conversation today to be around the positive spin of this, because I know that that's how you lead this conversation. Because as women, it's like, this is happening and this is happening. And we joke and we kind of make fun of it. But at the same time, there's this underlying hint of discouragement. So what's the positive side of what we're walking through?
The positive side is that this doesn't have to be your normal. And I think stepping back and looking at it as a human condition, women are living so much longer than they ever have in a time that is so fast paced. We are working outside the home. We are making these careers. And for men, the drop off is very, very gradual. But for women, we have this event, and we call it menopause, which is really just the one day after you haven't had a period for a year. We make such a big deal about it, but it's essentially one day, because after that you're in postmenopause.
Right.
And before that, you're sort of in perimenopause. And that perimenopausal transition can last, 10 years-ish. So if, kind of the mean age of, finishing your period is about 52, that's your early 40s. You maybe have toddlers, you maybe have teenagers. You are in a time of your life, career-wise as well, where you can't slow down. You can't sort of wither away and die. And so it's changed to, really not allowing ourselves to fall into this sort of colloquialism of, oh, it's normal. This is natural. Well, antibiotics are unnatural, but we are sure thankful that we have antibiotics in this day and age. And so for women, we're not doing anything that your body hasn't done in the first part of your life.
Right.
So it is allowing women to stay vibrant and to feel better. The biggest thing is to feel better into their golden years,
Beautiful.
into their silver years, into their platinum years.
It's almost like a queendom.
Yes.
You're turning from the princess to the queen. I remember somebody saying that to me, and I thought, oh, I like that analogy, because when we go through changes as teenage girls, that's our princess years. And then it was like, it's the same sort of changes, but now we're graduating into our queen years. And I was like, oh, I like that.
Yes.
That was a positive spin that I was like, I can roll with that. But I suppose you have some things up your sleeve that can help women feel better. What are those things that you love to recommend to your patients?
So I love women to come in, and the way that we talk about it is sort of like precision medicine. So the biggest thing is that I don't know what your hormones were doing, what those levels were when you were 20 and feeling amazing. Nobody knows that because we don't test that. That's not something that we have on hand. So the goal is to actually not get you to any specific level in your hormones. The goal is to make you feel better. And so, physiologically, we know some things. So usually the first thing to go is progesterone in the body. And so women will often have sleep changes. So they won't be able to get to sleep. They won't be able to stay asleep. They might have some night sweats or kind of cold sweats. But women will say, I used to be able to sleep. It used to be great. But now, no fail, I get up at 3:32 every morning. I roll over. I know the time. I know what the time is going to say on the clock. And so they're not getting restful sleep. Or they'll lie down to go to bed and they say, I'm so exhausted that I go to sleep and then I cannot shut my brain off for no particular reason. And it is just going. They might have some doomsday thinking, or they might just have this overwhelming sense of anxiety where for no particular reason, they are just kind of catastrophizing a little bit. And so those are some of the hallmarks that we see with a decrease in progesterone. And so when we supplement with some bioidentical micronized progesterone, women get their sleep back. And sleep, of course,
Really?
we know, yes, sleep, it affects the whole rest of
It
your
sure
other
does.
day.
It really
The
does.
whole rest of your other day.
Mhm.
And then we go based on symptoms. So, I do blood work for women. And yes, that gives us a great one snapshot into what your body was doing that day. And if you're still having a regular menstrual cycle, we'll try and go towards a certain day of that cycle to give us kind of the best idea of what you're doing. But then, like I said, I'm not getting you to a specific level. I am going so that you feel better. And it depends on what you're telling me and depends on how you respond to the changes that we make. It's very, very personalized.
And it sounds to me like you take subtle approaches too. So it's not these big, huge influxes. It's instead just sort of watching a woman and how she is affected positively, or maybe perhaps there's some negative changes, and being able to make slight adjustments. When you talk about sleep, my heart, I almost want to cry actually, because I love sleep. And I'm a different person when I sleep, and then I'm a different person when I don't get enough sleep. And the idea of waking up every night to me is almost a form of torture. I have always been that person that lays my head on the pillow. I'm asleep until I wake up the next morning. And now it's looking at the clock. I don't have a lot of anxiety in the evening. Sometimes I've definitely had that where I start to spiral, but it's just more of the interruption. So you're saying we can change that?
Yes, we can
Oh.
change that. We can absolutely change that. And it's just small doses. So, women, we tend to think of menopause as sort of falling off this cliff, and perimenopause as sort of the road to get there. And so when you're just supplementing for the symptoms that you have, it's small little doses that make such a big difference. And we're not giving anything that your body doesn't naturally produce.
Right.
So this is the big thing. And yes, there are synthetic hormones, certainly. And synthetic hormones in the past have really done us a disservice because there are some studies, the Women's Health Initiative study, which was the big one that was done and stopped. They were using synthetic estrogen, synthetic progestogens, and these are different. And so this is where the nuance and the semantics actually make a really big difference. Because if I talk about estrogen and progesterone, I think that I know what the general population knows, but they don't, because they might be thinking something completely different.
That's right.
The birth control pill is estrogen and progesterone, but they are synthetic versions. And so that's where the nuance really comes into it. And so you need to break that up, and you need to have women understand that, even if they're reading something, generally someone will say estrogen as sort of a catch-all. But there is estradiol, there is estrone. There are differences
Really?
in the types of estrogen, and same with progesterone. So a micronized progesterone is a bioidentical that your body makes, and then there are progestins. So, Depo-Provera is a progestin shot that is synthetic. And so all of these things make a difference. And so when you're either looking for a provider or you're looking for information, you have to be at least aware enough that what you're reading, they might be writing kind of, for the general population, but it is broken down into these other little subtle things. And so when you know that, you can actually treat to those symptoms with something that is, your body is very familiar with.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize that because I've been put on a birth control, which feels, well, it's helped, but at the same time, it's not really aligned with me.
Yes.
And so I can choose a natural way of supplementing hormones.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yes. And birth control pill for, and I don't want to throw primary care providers under the bus at all.
Right.
They have very little time, not a lot of knowledge. And even for me, when I was in school, we did not get a lot of menopause specific or women specific health. It's all about getting you pregnant, having babies, making sure that part of the life is okay. But then the rest of us, the rest of the time that you're a woman, there isn't a lot of care really provided. And then, of course, you move into geriatrics, which is a whole other set of subspecialty. But the birth control pill can work really well for women because it just suppresses everything. So it just suppresses what your body is naturally doing, which is fluctuating in that hormonal transition. And it just suppresses everything and replaces it with this synthetic estrogen and synthetic progesterone. It can help with symptoms for sure. And it's a godsend for some women who come in and just are completely beside themselves, don't know what to do. And, of course, the family doctor's like, sure, we'll put you on some birth control. It will quiet everything down. Right. It won't give you those big highs and lows, but it's not actually helpful in the sense that it is giving you your edge back.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I can come to you and I can have these natural hormones. And is it like literally like an injection, like a needle?
So they come in different variables. Progesterone is usually a tablet.
Okay.
So it's a tablet. You can compound them in creams and things like that.
Okay.
But it's nice because the progesterone capsule, when you take it orally, is what helps with the sleep. Okay, so you take it at night. It helps with sleep. It's not a sedative by any means, but it has a bit of a calming effect. Have you ever had magnesium where you take the magnesium, has a little bit of a calming effect like that? Progesterone is the same. Okay. So bioidentical micronized progesterone, you take it at night, if a little bit before bed, you get into your routine, you read or you meditate, you do whatever, and it just helps sleep to come on and it will help you stay asleep. Some women need it throughout the day as well. And so for those women, or for those who are a little bit more sensitive, maybe they feel a little bit groggy in the morning, we can switch to a progesterone that's like a quick dissolve tablet. Okay. And so you take it, it dissolves quickly, like those like Listerine little tabs on your tongue, right? Yeah. So it dissolves really quickly. It doesn't go first pass through the liver, so you don't get that sedation effect. You don't get that sleep-inducing effect, but it helps you with progesterone through the day. Same with estrogen. So estradiol, we can give it orally. We can give it as a transdermal patch. We can give it in a cream. We can do it as a vaginal suppository. We can do it in all of these ways. And each one is specific to you in what is needed, because the transdermal patch is kind of a quick set it and forget it. So you change it twice a week or maybe once a week. And that provides you with a steady state of estradiol in your system. It helps a lot. Some women really, really like it. But it doesn't have some of these other effects like lowering your lipids, cholesterol, triglycerides, bad cholesterol. It doesn't have as much of a brain, bone, and breast protection as the oral estradiol. So it is very specific to the woman. And some women like kind of everything together. So they'll mix their testosterone cream and their estradiol and their progesterone all in one, and they just want to do it one time.
It all on you.
Exactly.
That's amazing. What helps with moods? So a lot of the women I speak to, they are saying like, I have such a great life and I'm building such a beautiful life, but there's this rage and anger that's in me that is kind of confusing because I have no need or reason to feel this way, but I do. What helps with that?
Mood can be progesterone. Mood can also be estradiol. So it is specific, and sometimes that's where blood work gives us a bit of an easier key. So we'll kind of take a look at it and we'll pair that to the symptoms that you're really having. But it's oftentimes just the fluctuation piece of it. And if we think about our reproductive organs and what they're meant to do, the perimenopausal transition is kind of like your body's last ditch effort to have a baby. And so a lot of times you're sort of firing, your body's kind of saying, okay, ripen all these eggs a little bit more. You kind of get really excited. And so some women really like the fluctuations that they get. They feel great. And if you've ever sort of subscribed or ascribed to that sort of thinking where you can kind of have superpowers through your menstrual cycle, some women will feel great, like just after they've gotten their period, and that sort of rise in estrogen kind of correlates with that. And then of course, after you ovulate, you sort of get into this cocooning. Okay, am I going to be pregnant? Am I not? And women will say, I don't schedule meetings in the last half of my cycle. I do all of my creativity and all of my big decisions in the first half of my cycle because they're trying to channel the way that they feel through those trends. So when women start to feel that sort of low mood or that sort of depression, that kind of insidious sort of feeling where they just don't feel like themselves, but they know enough to realize, okay, this isn't normal because I have a great life. My marriage is great. My kids are great. I love my work. I love my friend group. And they're doing all those things, but yet there's just this kind of underlying sort of malaise or motivation is another one that I hear a lot of. Women say they're just kind of like, if I didn't have to get up and get the kids up and I could spend my whole day in bed for no reason. I have a great life. I love my job. I love but yet there's this ugh sort of feeling. And so that is looking at those specific symptoms and then going back and saying, okay, let's try a little bit of this. Let's try a little bit of that and see if you feel better. That's the real precision piece of it.
Okay.
Because if we think about it, it's sort of using medications, not necessarily off label, but we take these hormones and we say, we're going to do a challenge. I'm going to challenge you to feel better. We're going to do a little bit of this hormonal supplementation. And if you feel better, great, we're going to go towards that. If you don't, then we'll change. We'll take a look. We'll titrate up and down.
Mm. So what I'm really loving about this conversation is we are not victim to our circumstances,
Never.
even in our bodies, which is really up my alley, because I feel like oftentimes we can feel victimized by some of the things that are going on with us, but you're saying there are solutions. And I feel like you're also saying to women, take the reins, like be responsible for how you feel and not just sort of muster through it, but instead get curious and come to you and find some solutions that you just sort of piece together for that person so that they have that energy back and their vibrancy back. Because again, as women, we have so much life. This is to me like the tipping point. I think women in their 40s, and now we're hearing women in their 50s just feeling alive and ready to like really spark their life. Then our bodies need to be ready for that type of vision for ourselves.
That's right. You now have the wisdom behind your years.
Yes.
And the knowledge in who you are that you need your body to keep up. 100%. And I find that that's when women tend to find me, is when they feel that most vulnerable, when they feel that most discouraged. You know, we kind of throw the word around, you know, oh, you're just gaslit, right? Like, don't get gaslit by whoever, right? And it's not just in medicine, you know, it's kind of in, you know, women, you know, we have had a bit of a history, you know, where there is this non-believance or this dismissal, and you have enough knowledge when you're coming through this to say, no, that's not where I'm going to sit. That's not what I'm going to allow to happen. And so it is too bad that you have to search that out. And like you said, be curious about it and really take that into your own hands so that you can be the author of your own life in the way that you feel going forward.
And I love this because I wouldn't be someone that would be easily dismissed from a doctor. Like, I'm curious, so I would ask questions. I know not everybody's like that. Sometimes we just want to be nice and pleasing, and so we just take an answer for an answer. What I notice in my life is I dismiss myself.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing I just picked up when you were saying that. It's not going to the doctor and having some resistance. For me, it's internal. I'm just like, I'm fine. I'm good. Just keep going. And that dismissive of self is, I wonder like how that plays out in other areas of my life.
I think it's a really good point that you bring up in that way. And we are super. We are super moms. We are super workers. We are super wives. We are so super. And so when we equate that, we do tend to sometimes dismiss our bodies. And yet, as you know, intuitive beings as well, we push that aside a little bit and we think, like you said, we'll get through it. I'm strong enough. I'm okay. It's not, you know, my mom pushed through it, all of that. Well, I mean, I remember some miserable times in my mom's life. I don't want that to happen. You know, as strong of women as we are, we need to, it goes back to that self-care piece. So it goes back to the self-care piece. This is all part of self-care so that you can show up the way that you want to, as the woman that you want to, in the other areas of your life.
I think you just nailed something for me. This is self-care.
Yes.
So we often think of self-care as sleep, what we eat, moving our bodies. But what we're saying here is there's also things that can support in the way we're feeling that is above and beyond those things that maybe have worked up until this point. But like you said, I have so many clients that are in perimenopause who eat well, they're sleeping, they're working out, they're doing all the things on the list, but they're changing. So this is just that next layer of self-care in this form of life.
Yes, yes, that's exactly it.
Mm.
And we can't dismiss that. We
No.
can't dismiss that because from you, and I said this before, everything else flows from you.
Yeah.
It just flows from you. So when you feel better, when you are balanced, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek because, yeah, we're going to balance your hormones. We're going to make you feel balanced as a person
Right.
all around. You will then be able to spread that to everywhere else in your life.
So let's assume somebody's listening right now and maybe they resonate with what I just said, where, you know what, I'm having these symptoms. I've just been bypassing, pushing it aside, mustering through. We're good at that as women, right? Just come on, we can do this. And perhaps this has disrupted them, or at least kind of pulled the curtain back where they're like, you know what, maybe I could feel better. What would that look like or feel like? Or maybe there's somebody listening who has gone down the route of meeting with their practitioner and feeling like they're just talking to empty space. Or, what I feel oftentimes is they're not even listening. They're just prescribing because it's what they do. And again, it's not to come down on, I actually have a great doctor, but it's not to come down on them. But I think it's very habitual in many ways. So what is her first step to connect with you and learn more? And does she have to come to you in person? Can she do blood work and then call you? Do you do things online?
We do both. So in person and online.
Okay.
And the first appointment is about an hour because it's all about the story.
Right.
I want to know your symptoms. I want to know what you've been doing. I want to know how you've been feeling. That is a really big part of it. And women oftentimes at the end are just so happy that somebody has listened. We've all gone to the doctors and seen it posted, one question or one concern per visit. And it's just such a short time to be able to actually express what it is,
Right.
especially if you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And a lot of women, they can't quite put their finger on what is happening. So you need that amount of time. And so we can do virtual, we can do in person.
Okay.
In person, we have a body composition machine, and I love to do that
Oh.
because it's really neat. It gives you weight, but it gives you muscle mass. It gives you body fat percentage. It gives you visceral fat, which is kind of fat around your organs. It gives us really great metrics that then we can look at over time, especially because we do have body composition changes
Right.
that happen.
Right.
So we can see, okay, oh yeah, I was feeling like my jeans are tight. Okay, we can see it on here.
Yeah.
And then, once things are aligned, we're like, oh yeah, no, well, it's not there anymore kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I do virtual as well. And so if you come with blood work, I'll review it because maybe there are some things that I would like to get that aren't there.
Sure.
And, or if not, then I will order blood work and then we will see. It is, like I said, just that one point in time, but I do match the blood work to the symptoms. And then we go from there. We really take a look at what it is that you are feeling. And then I can bring, hormones and these beautiful, beautiful, hormonal supplements into your world to really help you feel better.
It reminds me of like a tincture.
Yes.
Like we meet with you and you just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I love the fact that it is customized and personalized. And I also love that someone can just feel your essence because you are just such a gem of a human being. And I can attest because I know you away from the podcast too. And you're so sincere and passionate to have someone that they can trust like yourself and to know that they can live anywhere and tap into you is great. Actually, the last podcast you did, you said that there was a skin survey.
Yes.
And we had so many people do the skin survey. I don't know if you know that, but from the magazine, so many people went and did that because they were so inspired to look after their skin. And this is just, to me, this full spectrum approach to aging and caring for ourselves and really paying attention to the way we feel, because what we see on the outside is often what we feel on the inside.
Yes.
And so I really appreciate that you're doing the holistic approach.
Yes, you have to. You really have to. And yes, the business started as aesthetics, right? So the outside in, and it very quickly and organically grew to the inside out because there are those things that affect you.
Yeah.
And like I said, you have your hormones fluctuate, your skin feels it. Your skin feels it, you feel it in the way that you look. And so sure, we can do all those things on the outside too, but let's now balance the inside as well. And women really feel aligned with that. It should be holistic holistic care. All of our care should be
I
holistic.
agree.
But I think the problem is that we're very good in modern medicine at treating a disease, and menopause isn't really thought of as a disease. It's a natural progression, but that doesn't mean that we can't do things to preserve our vitality and preserve the way that we feel. And that's the real holistic piece, is not letting yourself fall victim to that sort of thinking where, okay, this is just the way it's going to be. I'm just going to live with this. Don't live with it. Live with feeling amazing. Yeah. That should be your baseline. Yeah. Your baseline should be, I feel amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking in the mirror and being proud of the reflection looking back. And that's not in vanity. I don't know if this is a nice thing to say, so I'm just going to preface, but I think it's going to be a great conversation. You sort of, you see women, and you see those women who I feel have oftentimes given up. And whether it's because they gained weight, or whether their hair has changed, or whether they don't like what they're seeing in the mirror, it's almost like there was a point that she just gave up. And I look at that not through judgments. This is where I want to be understood. I'm not judging her. It's more of like my heart aches a little bit to say, what got you to the point of giving up when there are now solutions and things that we can have that can support us? And again, it's not to be vain, and it's not to say you have to look a certain way. It's just that you feel so good in your own skin, that you're showing up in your life, and you're not sitting on the couch in sweatpants and just sort of waving your white flag. There's so much life to live.
Those women are lost.
Yeah.
They're lost in themselves. And I really do feel that, because they come into the office and they are just so lost. They're lost in the way that they feel. They may have tried to reach out, and, we are anomalies, I think, in the way that we would approach a healthcare practitioner appointment. Yeah. Not everyone is like that. And so they may have gotten up the guts to bring this up and then been really quickly dismissed. And then they just get lost in the way that they feel. Like you said, there's an emotional component to it. Yeah. So women will start to feel depressed. They'll start to feel anxious, and they just get lost in that feeling without any kind of map or way to see the light. Yeah. And so sometimes it'll be a patient bringing their mother in, or, a favorite aunt, and where they've seen that transition, and they will say, they used to be so vibrant. They used to have so much fun. They used to go out all the time. And now, they don't come out. I've just watched them sort of disintegrate before my eyes. And you're giving them hope. We're giving them hope. And that is so powerful. That is so powerful, because then you decide that you're going to now show up again. You just start to feel a little bit more like yourself. You get to find her again. And you just sort of get that spark again. And that part, I think, is really important.
It is. To remember it's not too late.
Yes, it's never too late.
It's not. And this whole magazine and the cover of our magazine, that's the mission we really wanted to bring forward, is that age does not determine what's left of you. And we see so many amazing things now, especially with social media and, being able to witness women in their 70s starting businesses. Yes. And so if you're in your 40s or even in your 50s or beyond, it's still like young, because it's not the way it used to be. So I hope that women listening in get a little burn in their belly from hearing you, to take control, to remember that they're not sort of done yet, that those dreams that are humming and keeping them awake at night are meant for them. And it's just a matter of them showing up and becoming the woman that can host those beautiful desires. And it starts with like that first step, like walking in and meeting you and finding those solutions for herself.
It really is. It really transforms a lot of lives. And some women will, they are at that precipice. They know that there is something else. They know that the way that they're feeling right now is not sustainable for them. And you give them that hope, you give them that language, you give them that spark, and they are off and running. It's just that little bit of it, especially if I give them a little bit of testosterone, then they're really off and running. Then they are, are working out, they've got energy to spare, their sex life is good. All of that comes back. And I think this is a really interesting piece too. And I kind of joke about it, but you know, there are other symptoms, you know, like the gentle urinary symptoms that come, right? Vaginal dryness. They start to have some stress incontinence. So you laugh or you cough, and all of a sudden you're having a little bit of incontinence where you never had.
Right.
You've got estrogen receptors down there. You're not having as strong of orgasms, or maybe you haven't had sex in a while because now all of a sudden it hurts. Oh man, you give a woman her sex life back, she will love you forever because we don't talk about it as much.
True.
You know, we don't, but it's so important, for her personally. It's so important for her relationships. It's important for the way that she feels empowered in her body. And those things are so simple that make a huge difference. You give her that superpower back.
You do. You do. Her life back,
Mm-hmm.
her vivaciousness, her brilliance, her glow, her spark. Like, yes, please. So where can people come to learn more through you and start to investigate? And I want to encourage everybody listening in to make this call for themselves, to do the very thing for themselves that's going to set them on the trajectory of living their best, most delicious life, no matter what age. You know, some of my audience are in their 20s, so this is really great education for them to sort of lean in and know what to look forward to. Let's just say that, look forward to. But then there's a lot of us who are in it. Where can they come to find you?
So they can come find me at the clinic website. So the clinic is clairderma.com.
Okay.
They can follow me on Instagram. So I am Olenka NP Injector. And the clinic as well is at clairderma.com. We do virtual consults if you're in our area. And I mean, I do have women travel. You know, sometimes they love to have at least one in-person appointment.
Yes.
But I do virtual. And it just is that self-serving, that self expression you need to feel better in yourself. And it is like we said, that self-care that you need to be able to project that into all those other aspects of your life.
2026, it's the year. It's
the year
to get back in the saddle, to do the things we're meant to do, and to do it in a beautiful way where we feel energized and alive in our lives. So thank you so much. I love talking to you. As you know, you are so articulate and so educated and also passionate. And I think it's rare where you find somebody that's educated and passionate. So to have those two ingredients meld together with just a beautiful woman herself is, to me, chef's kiss. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. This is something that I have grown through organically. I love it. I love seeing the change in women, giving them their life back, letting them stand in their power, and just seeing the incredible things that they do with their life.
Yes. More, please.
Yes.
Thanks, Olenka.
Thank you, Jen.